Okay, so good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all the students, parents, teachers, friends, Facebook, YouTube, and Narayana community. Today we are going to have a very exciting lecture, a very powerful lecture on climate change. And what is climate change? You hear this word almost everywhere. It's on the media channels, in the newspapers, in our textbooks. You find prominent people always discussing about climate change. But what is exactly climate change and how is it going to affect us? That is a question that we all have to uh, answer at the earliest, because climate change is going to change the way in which human beings live their lives. If we don't do anything right now to put an end to climate change or to adapt ourselves in a way that the planet doesn't get destroyed, adapt our day-to-day functionings, change our day-to-day functioning so that we don't harm the planet, then we can continue to survive. But if we don't do that, then it'll be very difficult for our species to survive, and world as we know it will probably come to an end. So let me first talk to you about the definition or the meaning of climate change. Climate change or global warming is the process of our planet heating up. Since the Industrial Revolution, human activity has caused the Earth to warm up by approximately 1 degree Celsius. Rising temperatures doesn't just mean that we will get nicer, warmer weather. The changing climate will make our weather more extreme and unpredictable. So we'll be susceptible to a lot of storms, hurricanes, and earthquakes, right? And it'll be very difficult if the earth continues to heat up. As temperature rises, some places will get wetter, and lots of animals and humans will not be able to adapt to the changing climate. So basically what's going to happen is some places will get very wet, some places will get very dry, and it'll be difficult for life to actually adapt to the changing conditions, and a lot of animals will go extinct. Human beings will find it very difficult to actually live life like this, because you will not have water, it'll be very hot, and it'll not be a comfortable situation to live. We are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. This was said by the former President of the United States, Barack Obama, and it is so true in today's world. I want to first introduce to you about a small young teenager who's making a sea of change in the political scenario today. Greta Thunberg is a Swedish teenager who skipped school and inspired an international movement to fight climate change. She has become an international leading voice, inspiring millions to join protests around the world. So Greta Thunberg is a teenager, who's about 16 or 17 years of age, who said, "I'm not going to school. I'm going to fight for some change. Now, if we don't fight for a change right now, then the future, she won't be able to go to school, or the future will not be there for her." So she's like, let us all come together and fight for this thing known as climate change. So I want to show you a small video about this girl.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
So that was a small video about Greta Thunberg and what she is doing to the international community. She's calling out for nations, calling out for people to bring about a change and start looking towards the planet rather than just focusing on economic growth, making money, and destroying the limited resources that we have. But let me first talk to you about the history of climate change before we can actually discuss what is happening right now. You see, the Earth's climate has always changed throughout history. Just in the last 650,000 years, there has been about 7 cycles of glacial advances and retreats, with an abrupt end of the Ice Age 7,000 years ago. So the climate of the Earth has continuously been changing over millions and millions of years. This marked the beginning of the modern climate era and human civilization. After 7,000 years, when the climate change stopped, when the ice age stopped, that is when human beings could actually take up agriculture. We could settle down and we could grow our crops because it was not too cold. And then that is how civilization came together. And this is where we are today. Most of the climate change patterns are attributed to very small variations in the Earth's orbit that changes the amount of solar energy a planet receives. So basically what this means is the Earth, the closer it gets to the sun, the hotter it gets. And that is what has always been changing over a period of time. When the Earth goes further away from the sun, it gets cooler. And this is why climate change has happened. But the current era of climate change that we're talking about today is a consequence of human activity since the mid 20th century. You see that in the last 200, 300 years, industries have come, and industries use resources from nature and they tend to pollute the environment a lot. This speed of climate change is very rapid and unprecedented since millennia. That means it is happening at a very fast speed. All the climate changes that have happened in the past happened gradually over thousands of years. But in the last 200 years, the amount of devastation that has actually happened to Earth is very fast. Species are becoming extinct very fast because they cannot adapt to their changing environment. And that is what is happening today. The Earth is getting hotter and hotter. And if we don't act now, then the Earth will get so hot that we cannot live on Earth anymore. The planet and its inhabitants do not have time to adjust to the speed of change. Ancient evidence of climate change can be found in tree rings, ocean sediments, coral reefs, and layers of sedimentary rock. The ancient climate, okay, or the paleoclimate evidence reveals that current warming is roughly 10 times faster than the average rate of ice age recovery warming. So you see that after 7,000 years ago, how fast how fast the ice age ended. Immediately after about 7,000 years, we have uh, global warming, and this global warming is so fast. Okay, ice age took thousands of years to settle in and cool the planet, but the rate of global warming today is alarming. It is catastrophic to a point that it is getting hotter faster than we can actually understand. So let's look at the causes of climate change. The first cause is burning fossil fuels. Over the past 150 years, industrialized countries like countries of Europe, and the US have been burning large amounts of fossil fuels such as oil and gas. These gases released into the atmosphere act like an invisible blanket, trapping heat from the sun and warming the earth. This is known as greenhouse effect. So a lot of gases are being released into the atmosphere that would create a thick blanket around the earth, and it does not let the heat from earth go outside. So it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. The second cause for climate change is farming. Now, believe it or not, eating habits of cows contributes to a lot of global warming. When cows eat, A type of greenhouse gas called methane builds up in their digestive system and is released in the form of a burp. Now, it might sound very funny to you. Okay, imagine cows burping and it's adding to climate change. But there are about 1.5 billion cows releasing all that gas into the atmosphere. And that's adding up to the blanket or greenhouse blanket that is above the Earth's atmosphere, and that is making it hotter today. Deforestation. Forests absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, that is another greenhouse gas, from the air and release oxygen back into the atmosphere. But Amazon rainforest is large and so efficient that it's acting like the planet's air conditioner or the air filter and is purifying the air inside. But sadly, many rainforests are being cut down to make wood, palm oil, and to clear way for farmland, roads, oil mines, and dams. So we talk about development. We talk about expanding cities. We talk about having dams. We talk about building industries. Where do we get this land from? We start cutting off a lot of forests. Now, forests play a lot of role apart from having an ecosystem of their own. They also provide oxygen. They absorb the carbon dioxide. When a lot of carbon dioxide is absorbed, you see the earth becomes cooler because the blanket becomes smaller. But we are cutting down the forests, and because of that, the carbon dioxide will continue to remain in the atmosphere and the earth gets hotter. How will climate change affect the planet? That's another interesting question. The first thing is sea level rise. So, global sea levels have risen by about 8 inches in the last century. The rate in the last 2 decades, however, is nearly double that of the last century. So basically what is happening is you have a lot of ice or glaciers in the mountains that are melting. All this water from the ice gets into the sea and the sea level will rise. They will rise so high that all the land or the continents will start sinking and we will not have place to live. If all the land is underwater, then where can we live? So if the sea levels rise, right, it'll be so difficult that we'll all start fighting for land now, because we'll all start running away from the coast and coming to the center of the country, because that is where we don't have the sea, but the land will continue to sink. And once all of the land is underwater, where do we go? The global temperature rise. The planet's average temperature has risen by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 1.1 degrees Celsius, since the late 19th century. 2016 was the warmest year on record, with 8 out of 12 months recording exceptional temperatures. So basically, the Earth is getting hotter. Now, if the average temperature increases by 2 degrees, all the ice in the Arctic and Antarctic will melt. The sea level will rise. Coral reefs will start dying out, right? And I'll get to coral reefs in a bit. But if the global temperatures rise beyond 2 degrees, then life as we know it will come to an end. Warming oceans. The oceans have absorbed much of the increased heat. So whatever heat is there in the atmosphere, the oceans are sucking it in and absorbing it, thus cooling the planet. With the top 700 meters of the ocean showing a warming of about 0.302 degrees Fahrenheit since 1969. So the oceans are also becoming hot because they're absorbing the heat from the atmosphere. When the oceans become hot, all the ice that is on the water will start to melt, and then the level of the ocean will rise again, thus sinking land masses. Shrinking ice sheets. So Greenland and Arctic ice sheets have decreased in mass, thus contributing to the rising sea levels. Experiments show Greenland lost 150 to 250 cubic kilometers of ice per year between 2002 and 2006, while Antarctica lost about 152 cubic kilometers of ice between 2002 and 2005. So a lot of ice is being melted out. Now let me give you a small fact. About 3% of Earth's water is fresh water. 2.5% of the Earth's fresh water is unavailable to us. It's locked up in glaciers, in polar ice caps, in the atmosphere. The only amount of water that is left to us is 0.5%. So 0.5%, that is less than 1%. That's half a percent. And we are polluting this remaining water that is there with us. Whatever water is trapped in the glaciers, the fresh water is again melting and going into the sea, and we will not be able to use it. So if these glaciers start melting, where do we get fresh water from? That's another question to think about. So declining Arctic sea ice, I've shown a small graph, and you can see how the ice has been melting since 1980s to about 2012. Today, it's far less than what you see. Glacial retreat. So glaciers are basically retreating. Glaciers are retreating almost everywhere around the world, including in the Alps, Himalayas, Andes, Rockies, the Alaskan mountain ranges, and Africa. Every mountain range that you see where you find glaciers, you find them reducing year by year because they're all melting because of the heat in the atmosphere. Extreme events. The number of record high temperature events in India have been increasing, while the number of low temperature events have been decreasing since 1950. So suddenly you'll find yourself in a storm. You'll find hurricanes, you'll find tsunamis, you'll find earthquakes, all because of this temperature change on the planet. Ocean acidification. So guys, you should realize that ocean is becoming acidic in nature day by day. Now, every one of us, a lot of us like to go play in the ocean. When you put your hand in the water, nothing happens. But now if the ocean starts becoming acidic to a point that it becomes an acid. Now imagine putting your hand in the ocean, or you can't even play in the ocean. Fishes, marine life, everything in the ocean will die because the ocean is becoming acidic. How is it becoming acidic? The ocean starts absorbing this carbon dioxide gas that is in the atmosphere. The more it absorbs, the more acidic it starts becoming. So we have to think about reducing our carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of life, about 25% of marine life is actually found along coral reefs. Now, coral reefs have the highest biodiversity of any ecosystem on the planet, even more than a tropical rainforest. Occupying less than 1% of the ocean floor, coral reefs are home to more than 25% of marine life. Can you imagine? Now, when the temperature starts to increase, coral reefs start losing their color. They have algae that live with them inside their tissue, and fish feed off these algae, and that is why you have a lot of life along the coral reefs. But as the temperature starts to increase, the coral reefs will start giving away these algae, and they start becoming white. They get bleached, and then they die out. And if the coral reefs die out, then a huge chunk of marine life will die out as well. Decreased snow cover. Satellite observations have shown that the amount of snow received is reducing each year, and the snow is melting faster. So every year you have less snow that is forming, and you have more snow that is melting out. So that is an alarming thing that is happening today. Polar bears. Now, polar bears are losing out on their icy natural habitat due to warm temperatures. Polar bears need sea ice to hunt, raise their young, and need places to rest after long periods of swimming. So polar bears can't live in water. They have to live on the ice. And with the temperatures increasing, all the ice is melting. They're unable to find a place to rest. They're unable to find places to stay because there's no ice left for them. Everything is melting. They have to swim for hours before they can find a glacier on which they can rest. Many cubs are drowning every year because they can't swim for prolonged periods of time. Experts believe that Arctic sea ice is melting at an alarming rate of 9% per decade. So by 2050, we will have no more glaciers, no more ice if the current trends continue. Ringed seals. So ringed seals make caves in snow. They also need to raise their pups, feed and mate, again on snow and on glaciers. If the ice is gone, they face the threat of going extinct by losing their landmass. Orangutan. So they live in rainforests of Indonesia. Their habitat is cut down to make way for palm oil plantations. There are around 104,700 Borneo orangutans and 7,500 Sumatran orangutans, right? The Sumatran orangutan is critically endangered today. Around 3,000 orangutans are killed each year because we intrude into their rainforests and we're cutting off their trees. And before you know it, in the next decade, within the next 10 years, if this trend doesn't stop, the orangutan will go extinct. Sea turtles. Just look at this creature. What a beautiful creature. Sea turtles rely on nesting beaches to lay their eggs. So they need the beaches to lay their eggs. But due to the rising sea levels, the land is lost to water, and hence the turtles are unable to breed and face the threat of extinction. Temperature of nests determine the eggs, whether they are female or male. Okay, high temperatures would result in female eggs and low temperatures would result in male eggs. But because the earth is getting hotter every day, right, you have a lot of female turtles that are being born and less male turtles. Thus, the future of turtle population is under threat. Weather and changing patterns. You see, Arctic animals are losing out on their habitats. Now, Arctic ice is melting faster than it can freeze. If the current trends persist, then the ice will be gone by 2050. But one important role the ice plays is that it reflects the sun's rays and the heat is also sent back into the space. But with less and less ice, less heat is reflected and more heat is absorbed by the planet. So the heat from the sun is becoming hotter and hotter because nothing is going back again, nothing is being sent out into the space. Everything is being held inside the earth. If the ice caps melt, they could relieve massive amounts of carbon that has been trapped under the ice for thousands of years. And even this will add to further climate change and global warming. When the ice is gone, the ecosystem will be thrown out of balance, and many animals such as polar bears, penguins, seals will die. Now, there's extreme wetness. That's another problem. The atmosphere holds more water than air when the air is warm. This will lead to heavy torrential rainstorms that will uproot trees and create landslides, landstorms such as hurricanes. And you see what happened in Calcutta. You see the floods and you see the hurricanes that are coming. It's going to cost a lot to actually save people's lives and rebuild the city once again. Floods are getting more powerful and destroying homes and causing a lot of economic problems. Wet places are getting wetter and dry places are getting drier. Now, global warming threatens evapotranspiration. Now, what is evapotranspiration? The movement of water into the atmosphere from land, water surfaces, and plants due to evaporation and transpiration. Precipitation has declined in many years, thus we're getting less rainfall sometimes, and the entire rain cycle has changed. Storms are getting more intense with rising temperatures on the planet. Rising water temperatures cause greater differences between ocean water and air. These temperatures drive storms like hurricanes and massive floods. Now, storms cost a lot of money. Okay, the average annual loss from floods in India is, look at that number, it's so huge, about 55,925 crores and 13 lakhs every year we spend on floods, flood relief. In 2018, the floods in Kerala was estimated to cost more than 27,963 crores and 80 lakhs. It is so expensive. Once the city is hit by a flood, to get the water out, to restore electrical power lines, to rebuild homes, to save people, to pay for the medical bills. You see, it is so much. Only if we take care of the planet will we be saved. Otherwise, this is only going to happen more and more. Now, sheer heat from rise in temperature can cause roads to melt. A devastating 10-day heat wave in India caused the death of nearly 2,500 people. And, summers are getting hotter and it's so difficult for us to survive the summer. Every year it's getting hotter and hotter. Now imagine 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how hot the summer will be. We'll use a lot of air conditions. And again, that will also damage the planet by depleting the ozone layer. They release those harmful gases. So can we actually continue to live like this by damaging the planet beyond repair? I don't think so. The cities affected the most had to set up cooling centers to combat the illness from the heat. Temperatures reached as high as 45 degrees Celsius, and that will go up to 50 and 55, in the coming years if we don't act now. Water rises 1 inch a decade, which is twice what it has been before. So water levels that are 13 feet higher than today will become the normal in future. We will not have land to live on. All the coastal areas will completely be submerged. A lot of villages will go underwater. A lot of people will die. A lot of people will lose their homes. And then where will they go? Global warming is causing more problems than we think, and it can no longer be tolerated. The earth is the only home we've ever known, and we can't live here much longer if we keep acting like the way we are now. So we have to become responsible citizens. We have to stop damaging the planet. We have to start bring about a change. There's no point looking at the future generation or blaming the previous generation. We're all at fault. We are all part of the system now. And we have to request the lawmakers to bring about a change to become more environment friendly as the days go by. And that is the only way we can survive and we can save a lot of innocent animal lives at the same time. Now understand there are two theories. One is known as catastrophism. So it is a theory which suggests that the earth has been affected in the past by sudden, short-lived, violent events, possibly worldwide in scope, such as floods and the creation of major mountain formations. So earthquakes, tsunamis, they've all helped shape land masses. Okay, contrasting theory to catastrophism is uniformitarianism. Slow incremental changes such as erosion created all the Earth's geological features. So there are two theories that actually created land masses on Earth. One is catastrophism and one is uniformitarianism. Now let us understand all the things that will go wrong if we don't stop the climate change. Tornadoes. What is a tornado? It's a destructive vortex of violent rotating winds having the appearance of a funnel-shaped cloud and advancing beneath a large storm system. Most tornadoes have a wind speed of about 180 kilometers per hour and a height of 250 feet, while some extreme tornadoes can have a wind speed of 480 kilometers per hour and are more than 3 kilometers in diameter, and they travel hundreds of kilometers. Now, if a tornado like this hits the city of Bangalore, or any city in India, the city will be wiped out. And this will only happen if we don't stop climate change. Hurricanes. It is a tropical cyclone characterized by low pressure center accompanying strong winds and thunderstorms that bring heavy rain. Hurricanes can drown cities. Water levels will rise. They'll bring in excessive rainfall. And our cities and villages are not equipped to handle so much of rainwater. Tsunamis. Now we've all heard about tsunamis, right? It's a seismic wave caused by the displacement of a large volume of water, generally in the ocean or lake. Now earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, glacier carvings, meteor impacts, all have the power to cause a tsunami. Earthquake. A quake or a tremor is the shaking of the surface of the earth, resulting from the sudden release of energy in the Earth's lithosphere that creates seismic waves. So the tectonic plates below the land masses continue to move. And when they move, you start seeing that the land starts to separate and then everything on it will start falling off, like buildings and metros, bridges. Wildfires. Now, wildfire is a fire in an area of combustible vegetation that occurs in the countryside and forests. It happens in India too, in the summer especially. It began with the appearance of terrestrial plants 420 million years ago. But there are two causes to wildfires. One is natural cause and the other one is man-made cause. Natural causes happen during summer when there's intense heat and or when there's a lightning strike that strikes dry vegetation, and the dry vegetation or dry leaves catch fire, and then the entire forest is on fire. Man-made causes when people deliberately burn crops or when they deliberately set fire. Sometimes you find people who are smoking in the forest area and they will drop their cigarette without putting it off, and that will cause a wildfire that will kill thousands of animals and destroy countless trees. Now, I want to talk to you about the wildfire that hit Australia. You see, every year there is a fire season during Australia's summers. Natural causes such as lightning strike are to blame for most of the time. Humans are also to be blamed. The New South Wales police have charged 24 people for deliberately starting bushfires or deliberately setting fires that led to wildfires, and a lot of houses were burnt, a lot of people were killed in the fires. Wildfires began to plague Australia since July of last year. Blazes have torn through bushlands, woodlands, national parks, and cities. Experts say climate change has worsened the scope and impact of natural disasters like fires and floods. Weather conditions are growing more extreme, and fires are starting more earlier in the season and spreading with greater intensity. Entire towns have been engulfed in flames, and many people have lost their lives. More than 7 million hectares of land have been burnt across Australia. Can you imagine? So many trees, so many animals have died because of wildfires. More than 500 million of animals have been affected, and millions of animals were killed during this wildfire. In 2019, the Amazon rainforest fire burnt more than 7 million hectares of land. These are some pictures of the wildfire that hit Australia. You can see koalas that are on fire and they have nowhere else to go. The trees are burning, the land is burning. Many of them were burned to death. So a huge rescue effort was made. People started volunteering and they started saving these wild animals from the forest. So many of them were burned to death. This is such a sad scene. So I want to show you a video about Greta Thunberg's speech at TEDx. It is such a beautiful speech and such a moving speech. And it's so mature for a young girl who's 16, 17 years to speak like this. Okay, I want you to hear the speech out because it carries such deep meaning and where you and I will also be influenced to bring about a change.
When I was about 8 years old, I first heard about something called climate change or global warming. Apparently that was something humans had created by our way of living. I was told to turn off the lights to save energy and to recycle paper to save resources. I remember thinking that it was very strange that humans, who are an animal species among others, could be capable of changing the Earth's climate. Because if we were, and if it was really happening, we wouldn't be talking about anything else. As soon as you turn on the TV, everything would be about that. Headlines, radio, newspapers. You would never read or hear about anything else, as if there was a world war going on. But no one ever talked about it. If burning fossil fuels was so bad that it threatened our very existence, how could we just continue like before? Why were there no restrictions? Why wasn't it made illegal? To me, that did not add up. It was too unreal. So when I was 11, I became ill. I fell into depression. I stopped talking and I stopped eating. In 2 months, I lost about 10 kilos of weight. Later on, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism. That basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary. Now was one of those moments. For those of us who are on the spectrum, almost everything is black or white. We aren't very good at lying, and we usually don't enjoy participating in the social game that the rest of you seem so fond of. I think in many ways that we autistic are the normal ones, and the rest of the people are pretty strange. Especially when it comes to the sustainability crisis, where everyone keeps saying that climate change is an existential threat and the most important issue of all, and yet they just carry on like before. I don't understand that, because if the emissions have to stop, then we must stop the emissions. To me, that is black or white. There are no gray areas when it comes to survival. Either we go on as our civilization or we don't. We have to change. Rich countries like Sweden need to start reducing emissions by at least 15% every year. And that is so that we can stay below a 2-degree warming target. Yet, as the IPCC have recently demonstrated, aiming instead for 1.5 degrees Celsius would significantly reduce the climate impacts. But we can only imagine what that means for reducing emissions. You would think the media and every one of our leaders would be talking about nothing else, but they never even mention it. Nor does anyone ever mention the greenhouse gases already locked in the system, nor that air pollution is hiding a warming, so that when we stop burning fossil fuels, we already have an extra level of warming, perhaps as high as 0.5 to 1.1 degrees Celsius. Furthermore, does hardly anyone speak about the fact that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, with up to 200 species going extinct every single day. That the extinction rate is today between 1,000 and 10,000 times higher than what is seen as normal. Nor does hardly anyone ever speak about the aspect of equity or climate justice, clearly stated everywhere in the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. That means that rich countries need to get down to 0 emissions within 6 to 12 years with today's emission speed. And that is so that people in poorer countries can have a chance to heighten their standard of living by building some of the infrastructure that we have already built, such as roads, schools, hospitals, clean drinking water, electricity, and so on. Because how can we expect countries like India or Nigeria to care about the climate crisis if we, who already have everything, don't care even a second about it or our actual commitments to the Paris Agreement? So, why are we not reducing our emissions? Why are they in fact still increasing? Are we knowingly causing a mass extinction? Are we evil? No, of course not. People keep doing what they do because the vast majority doesn't have a clue about the actual consequences of our everyday life. And they don't know the rapid changes required. We all think we know, and we all think everybody knows, but we don't. Because how could we? If there really was a crisis, and if this crisis was caused by our emissions, you would at least see some signs. Not just flooded cities, tens of thousands of dead people, and whole nations leveled to piles of torn down buildings. You would see some restrictions, but no. And no one talks about it. There are no emergency meetings, no headlines, no breaking news. No one is acting as if we were in a crisis. Even most climate scientists or green politicians keep on flying around the world, eating meat and dairy. If I live to be 100, I will be alive in the year 2103. When you think about the future today, you don't think beyond the year 2050. By then, I will, in the best case, not even have lived half of my life. What happens next? The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children or grandchildren, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you, the people who were around back in 2018. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. What we do or don't do right now will affect my entire life and the lives of my children and grandchildren. What we do or don't do right now, me and my generation can't undo in the future. So when school started in August this year, I decided that this was enough. I sat myself down on the ground outside the Swedish parliament. I school striked for the climate. Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate scientist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. All we have to do is to wake up and change. And why should I be studying for a future that soon will be no more, when no one is doing anything whatsoever to save that future? And what is the point of learning facts within the school system, when the most important facts given by the finer science of that same school system clearly means nothing to our politicians and our society? Some people say that Sweden is just a small country and that it doesn't matter what we do. But I think that if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school for a few weeks, imagine what we could all do together if we wanted to. Now we're almost at the end of my talk. And this is where people usually start talking about hope. Solar panels, wind power, circular economy, and so on. But I'm not going to do that. We've had 30 years of pep talking and selling positive ideas. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. Because if it would have, the emissions would have gone down by now. They haven't. And yes, we do need hope. Of course we do. But the one thing we need more than hope is action. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then, and only then, hope will come. Today, we use 100 million barrels of oil every single day. There are no politics to change that. There are no rules to keep that oil in the ground. So we can't save the world by playing by the rules, because the rules have to be changed. Everything needs to change, and it has to start today. Thank you.
Wow. Can you imagine a 16-year-old girl giving a speech like that? She's so concerned about the environment. Not only environment, she's so concerned about the future generation. And if we don't act now, the future generation, that is when you become old, when you become big, when you have children, they will not have the life that you had. And they will blame you, they will blame me, they will blame us, saying, what did you do? What action did you take when you knew that this was going to happen? So let us actually understand the gravity of the situation now. Let us know how serious climate change is, and let us bring about the steps. Let us take action to prevent climate change, and so that the future generation also enjoys what we do today. The Earth is the only planet we have. There is no planet B. At the moment, we can't go to any other planet. We spend billions of dollars on space exploration, trying to get to Mars and all of that. But we spend trillions of dollars destroying the Earth, the only planet that we have. We cut down forests, right? We kill a lot of animals, destroying the ecosystem. The balance of the ecosystem is in turmoil. Let's act now. There is no other time in future for this. So I hope this lesson has actually brought some seriousness in you, and let us have a more sustainable approach. Let us have a more friendly, environment friendly approach towards climate change, and how we do. Let us not waste resources. Here's a list of vocabulary that you can actually go through. Since I'm really running out of time, you can always go back to this video and you can make note of these words and learn them. I would suggest that you read these books so you get a better understanding about climate change and the ecosystem in which we live in. Silent Spring by Rachel Carson is a beautiful book. Gaia, The Revenge of Gaia, and The Final Warning, Vanishing Face of Gaia, all three by James Lovelock. They're wonderful books, and it'll really give you a nice perspective about environment, climate change, and what we can do today to stop climate change. I hope this has been a wonderful lesson for you, and I'll see you again next Friday at 5 p.m. Right. Thank you.